Hello friends, it's Miss Jennifer here at BRAHM. Today we're talking about one of the most famous female artists in history, Georgia O'Keeffe. We're looking specifically at her paintings of skulls and flowers today. We are going to use watercolor and either black crayon or Sharpie marker to create a skull in a landscape with a little flower if you'd like to add one. So let's learn a little bit more about Georgia O'Keeffe before we begin. Georgia O'Keeffe is one of the most well-known female American artists of all time. She's mostly known for her large, close-up, vivid paintings of flowers and skulls set against the New Mexico desert landscape. Let's create our own version of a skull with a flower in the desert landscape. I've got a black crayon, or you could use a pencil or a black Sharpie marker, watercolor paints, water and a brush, and a couple paper towels handy. To start, I'm going to imagine a line down the center of my paper because skulls are symmetrical, the same on both sides. I'm going to make kind of a letter T right in the middle. I start with a line across, and then I make the vertical part of my T with a dotted line with my crayon. Next, I'm going to do some kind of curvy lines, trying to match both sides to the bottom of my T. Now I'm going to make the eye sockets. I'm going to color those in with black. You could leave them as is or make them colorful when you go to paint. And then two large holes where the animal's nostrils would be. Now I'm going to do the horns or antlers. You could make a deer or a cow skull, an ox. It's up to you. I'm doing kind of a bull or cow skull. So I'm doing two horns from the top edges of my T curving up. And now I'm pretty much finished with my skull. Georgia O'Keeffe often added flowers to her skull paintings. So I'm going to put a poppy here to the right. I'm making kind of a wavy circle with a big dark circle in the center and some black shapes coming out of that radial design to make my poppy. And I think I'm ready to paint. I'm going to start by wetting the sky in large areas, and then I will come back and add some blue watercolor paint and watch what happens. The paint will naturally move around everywhere that you've wet with water, so you won't see as many of your individual brush strokes. By wetting the paper first, this is called the wet into wet technique, and that's what a lot of watercolor artists use for their skies especially, or anytime you're doing a large body of water or any large shapes. It's very useful to get a nice smooth effect that way. And you'll see how the paint moves around where you've put the water on your paper. So first I paint with mostly water, cover a large space on my paper with water, going right up to the edges of my flower and my skull. And then I come back and add some of that blue watercolor paint to that area. And it kind of paints itself. I'm going to show you one more trick for a way that I like to do nice blue skies with watercolors. I'm letting the sky show through the nostrils in my cow skull today. You could do them black or another color. Alright, here's the last bit of my sky. And I'm actually going to put some mountains very bottom of my painting below the sky. So I'm going to leave the very bottom without painting sky. Now, I'm going to add some clouds in my sky. If your watercolor paint has already dried on your paper, go back with a little water, maybe a little paint too, and get it wet again, because we're going to pull out some clouds. I take a wadded up tissue or paper towel, and in wet places on my blue sky, I press it and hold it for a minute, and it pulls some of that paint back out and makes some nice puffy clouds. Kleenex actually work better than paper towels for this. I'm going to pull out more of this blue. Let's see if I wet it again. What do you think? Kind of a nice blue sky with a few clouds floating through. Alright. Now I'm going to do my poppy shape. So I do the same thing of wetting it. Trying to be careful not to let my paintbrush get all the way to where the blue sky is still wet. And the poppies are mostly red, but they have some bits of orange. So I'm going to start by putting some orange spots in my flower before I go for the red paint. And now I'll go for the red. And you see how the water on my paper helps the red and the orange just mix themselves together. Last, I'm going to do my mountains at the bottom. So I'm going to use some warm yellows, browns, and oranges, like desert mountains. If you wanted to do more like the Blue Ridge Mountains, you might use some greens, blues, and purple colors for your mountains. Last thing, I'm going to do a few shadows on my skull. So I'm going to paint a few places on the skull with water, and then get just the tiniest bit of black and purple, and use lots of water with that to make kind of a gray. You see, I'm using the lid of my watercolors as a palette, a place to mix my paints. And I'm adding just a few shadowy places. Those are almost darker than I want, so I'm going to add some more water and get a paper towel, just like I did with the clouds, and lift some of that shadow color back out. So it's not quite so dark. And then I'm going to add a shadow around the horns as well. Just to give it a little bit of a three-dimensional look. You can make your skull as colorful as you want. Georgia O'Keeffe was known for bold use of color in her paintings. I think I'm finished. I can't wait to see your skulls.